As you begin your study of Algebra 2, you want to remember how to solve one variable inequalities. So talk together or just look through these on your own and see if you remember how to do this. Hopefully what you remember to do is to solve like an equation, as if it were an equal sign, with one little switch up. So x plus 4 is greater than 10. We're going to undo that plus 4. So we're going to subtract it from both sides. And then we'll get x can be all the numbers that are greater than 6. With the next one, we have a couple things to do to get the x by itself. We need to add the 8. So we'll get 4x is greater than or equal to 4. And then we need to divide by 4. So x is greater than or equal to 1. The next one we have, that's a 1 minus 3x is greater than or equal to negative 14. So let's start by moving that 1. So we have negative 3x is greater than or equal to negative 14. Now we need to divide. So hopefully you remember in an inequality, when you multiply or divide by a negative, it changes the nature of the inequality, and so you need to reverse the inequality sign. So we change the greater than or equal to then to less than or equal then. On the next one, again, we're just going to undo the math. So I'm going to subtract my 5x's over. So I have negative 7 is less than or equal to x. And then we usually like to read inequalities left to right. So I'm going to switch that thing around. Notice the inequality follows the variable. So it becomes x is greater than or equal to negative 7. And lastly, I'm going to add my x over to the right and add my 9 to the left. So I get 12 is greater than 2x, divide by 2. 6 is greater than x, or x is less than 6. So let's put this down in some concrete steps, and let's use the 1 minus 3x is greater than or equal to negative 14, because that has a lot going on. So if you look over to the right, I have steps that you can think of when you're solving for a variable. Solving an inequality. You're going to collect the variable terms on one side and the numbers on the other, just like you were solving an equation. So we're going to subtract the 1 over, and we get negative 3x is greater than or equal to negative 15. You're going to undo the math in reverse order. Remember, when you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to reverse the inequality sign. So we'll do what we just did a moment ago. So we get x is less than or equal to 5. And then it's solved when we have the variable unequal to a number value like that. Now to graph it, we're going to draw a simple number line, mark and shade. So if the x value can be equal to, we use a solid dot. And if it cannot be equal to, we use an open dot to indicate that. So you do an even scale on your number line. You put your mark at 5 in this case, and it can be equal to 5, so it is a solid dot. And then we want to show all the numbers that are less than 5. So we're going to shade down to the left. And that's how I like to shade. I go up and over on my number line. Sometimes you'll have real-life situations that can be written as an inequality. So in order to get a bonus, Leighton must sell at least 120 newspapers. So not equal to, it needs to be at least. He's already sold 85 subscriptions in the first week. How many subscriptions must Leighton sell in the last week of the month? So if you look at the steps, you want to find the unknown and let the quantity the variable stand for that quantity. So what we don't know is how many subscriptions Leighton must sell in the last week of the month. So we'll let x equal subscriptions. You can use whatever variable you want. I'm just going to use x. Now I'm going to turn those words into an inequality. So x is what he needs to sell. He has already sold 85 subscriptions, and that has to be at least 120. So my inequality will be greater than or equal to. I always put my inequality down, and then I look at my math statement and make sure it matches the words. So now to solve for x, we're going to subtract 85. And we'll find out that Leighton needs to sell at least 35 subscriptions the last week of the month to make his minimum goal. All right, the width of a rectangle is 20 inches. What must the length be if the perimeter is at least 180? Sometimes in algebra, you're going to have to recall your prior math knowledge. So you're going to need to remember how to figure perimeter of a rectangle. So what we know is that our unknown is the length. I'm going to call it L. I remember that 2 times the length plus 2 times the width equals the perimeter of a rectangle. And now I'm going to turn those words into an inequality. So 2 times the length, that's what I'm looking for, plus 2 times the width, which is 20, needs to be at least, so greater than or equal to 180. Then this is the easy part. We just do the math to solve this inequality. So I'm going to divide by 2, and I find out that my length of this rectangle needs to be at least 70 inches in order to meet that minimum perimeter of 180 inches. Let's look at this last one. This might be pertinent to you this year. You set a goal in Algebra 2 to have a 90% or higher for your average on test quizzes and projects. The first 3 assessments, you score those scores. What percent do you need to score in your 4th? So the unknown, we're going to let that amount, that our variables stand for that quantity. So what you're trying to find is the amount you need to score in your 4th test. So we'll let that be X. So we know the scores of the other 3. We're going to add the 4th because I'm remembering that an average, as I add up what I have, I divide by that total number. So I'm going to divide by 4 because I'm figuring in that 4th test. And then I need to have an average of that is at least 90, so greater than or equal to 90. Now we just undo the math. So we're going to undo that division by multiplying each side by 4. I'm going to add up my 3 prior scores. I get 265 plus my 4th score needs to be greater than or equal to 360. Subtract, and you'll see that that 4th score needs to be at least a 95%. All right, that's a quick review on how to solve just simple inequalities.